Hi Gratitude family, Melanie here today, and I'm giving thanks to you with a little conversation about soul contracts. That's February's writing in the 2019 Gratitude Diary. So, soul contracts. What is a soul contract? I write the piece about a soul contract that I personally had in my own life back in 2016. And it was a really, really powerful time for me because I was really curious about what the nature of the connection with the other soul actually was about. And it took me a little bit of digging to sort of get a feel for this. So I wrote the piece hoping that it would give clarity to you. So my understanding of a soul contract is that it is not a soul mate. It is not a life partner. It is not a twin flame. A soul contract is a spiritual agreement with another soul that is specifically orchestrated and designed for you to be triggered into your law of attraction. And what I mean by that is into your law of attraction that is connected to some healing of an emotional wound that you have been carrying, perhaps for generations, perhaps for lifetimes, perhaps for years. That in the union with this other person, you come together so that causal wound can be opened up and seen. And once it's opened up and once it's seen, everything that's seen no longer has weight or power. So these relationships that we're having right now are designed to do exactly that. Now the problem is with soul contract relationships is that in our humanness and in our emotional vulnerability, we can become unconscious in what's eventuating, and we can attach with the mind to what we want to have occur and what our desires are, rather than seeing it as a soul contract connection, and for seeing it as the divine purpose that it is. So the questions in the Gratitude Diary are helping us to get clear about what it is that this connection, this soul contract, is actually teaching us. So for me personally, I experienced, rewind back 10, maybe 15 years, this particular person, I could, see him on the other side of the street and my nervous system would get activated. My physical energy would be activated. I was like, oh my God, who's that? Who is that? What is that? And I noticed this for years, like maybe 15 years. And eventually, over the time, we came together and we shared time together. And what happened in that time, and I always knew that he was coming, so a big part of me knew that I was going to have some sort of story or some sort of drama. Dharma with this person. So I always knew it, could always feel it. So what happened was when we eventually came together, there was a frequency between us that was very, very activating. And my nervous system became turned on, and I knew that whatever it was way bigger than me. During the course of our time together, it was only a very short time, 8 weeks, my heart opened, and I remembered feeling hopeful, and I remembered feeling quite positive about life. In the separation of that connection, my nervous system went into some sort of neurological shock or trauma. The disconnect was so sudden and so strong, I kind of went into trauma. So at that point, I'm in deep water, and I really didn't know how the hell I was going to be able to navigate out of this particular trauma. I didn't know what it was about. I didn't know what was going on. I was just grieving, like intensely crying for days and days and days on end. My mind would do crazy things like think that he was my soulmate, or think that that what happened shouldn't have happened. All sorts of really, really interesting emotional kind of illusions and delusions. But then I realised what was going on. Then I could feel the weight to it, and I decided that I was going to write it, and I was actually going to work through this emotional pain. So I allowed it, and I said yes. I said yes to the trauma, yes to the shock. Yes, gave thanks to it, which is a really key part when we're processing trauma and shock, is to keep saying yes to it, to keep inviting it in, and to keep regulating our nervous systems with love and with care. So that's what I did, and eventually I became aware of a very, very deep wound when I was 15 years old, and it was a wound of separation where my boyfriend at the time, who was 16, was killed in a car accident. And it was quite violent. It was a really violent car accident, and I was in the hospital waiting room when he came through, and I was able to see his dead body lying on the table. There were tubes coming out his mouth and nose, and he was stone cold. And I was in the room with him, and we'd been together intimately maybe 2 hours before. So that type of shock and trauma stayed in my system, and that was when I was 15 years old. And it wasn't until this law of attraction, soul contract kind of event happened that I was able to feel that and access that trauma that happened when I was 15. So on the other side of that now, I can actually see how I needed an awakener. I needed something to help me release that which was being held in my system in order to find freedom and to find grace again. So that is a soulmate. That is not a soulmate. That is a soul contract. That is a soul contract. A person that comes, and it's really important in these particular soul contract type of deals we have with people to remove the judgment. Because while ever we're judging, the person or the situation or their behavior or whatever they've done, we're denying ourselves the healing and the growth and the awakening and the expansion of what that person's actually showing us on a causal level. And what I mean by that is, what is the causal emotion that is sitting in the system that needs to be felt and that needs to be healed and that needs to be released? And so if you go to your worksheets in the Gratitude Diary for February, I ask you now, who have you had a soul contract with? And what were the feelings that were triggered? And we look at feelings in terms of, anger, loss, grief, sadness, shame, betrayal. What was the flavor of the feelings that were triggered? And what were the thoughts that were also triggered? I know my thoughts were along the line of, I'm too much, my energy's too big, I'm too much. That was my kind of thoughts. I keep pushing people away. I'm too big. So then the third question is, once you get into the feelings, what's the deeper feeling? So go to the feeling and then go back one more and go, what's the deeper feeling? In other words, when did the pain start? When did this particular flavor of that which you're being activated in and triggered into now, when did that pain start? Track it back. And then ask yourself, are you through? Ask yourself honestly, have you resolved that issue? And be really honest with yourself when you're asking yourself that question, because it's really easy to gloss over and avoid pain and avoid trauma. It's so easy just to put that away. I'm not going to feel that anymore. Give thanks. Give thanks to the person who bravely and lovingly agreed to play that supportive role for you. You're the star, but they are definitely in a supportive role, no matter how it looks. So give thanks to the player who came into your life, because they had the exact personality that you needed. They had the exact temperament. They had the mirror wounding, in fact, to what it was in you that you need to be feeling. They hold that themselves. So don't think for 1 minute that you're the victim and that they're getting off lightly over there, because these soul contracts are always a mirror effect. They're always one for one, because they're getting something out of this as much as what you are, and there is an exchange that's taking place, and there is an agreement that's taking place. So give thanks to that person for playing that role, because without the thanks, you don't get to take back what's yours, and you don't get the empowerment, and you don't get the freedom from the issue. And then finally, what's the gold? What was the gold? What did you take? What was the takeaway from that little story, from that connection? You know, what did you see about yourself? You know, I know my gold was, and this is really beautiful, my gold was that I always admired this person because I thought he was doing a really great job in the world with, you know, getting behind himself and backing himself as a person in his business, and making a change. He's a change maker and making a difference. And I admired that so much. So I then looked at him and I thought, you know what, I'm gonna do the same. I'm just gonna mirror that, and I'm gonna take that for me, and I'm gonna back myself now, and I'm gonna make videos and you know, get a little bit sharper with my PR and my social media and get myself out there a little bit more. So that was my goal. It was that, you know, the pedestal that I had in there was like, nah, hang on, I can actually be that person too in my own way. And then finally, give thanks again. Give thanks again for the soul contract that you have created and that you have finished. And the contract finishes when it is done. There are no time frames on these things. You can't say, I'm done with that now, I'm finishing it, I'm ending it, I'm cutting cords. The contract is done when it is done, and one day you will wake up and you will feel like it is done. And so be it. Thanks for sharing.